It is time for just another Mailbag Monday. We have
Hey,
mailbag
it's
questions
Monday.
from the listeners. I'm excited because it's actually Monday, and we might get to most of these. And then I
What a
have no
time to
idea
be
what we do
alive.
the rest of the week. There's actually games
There's
this week.
games. They're gonna play hockey.
We can talk about the
Back to
games.
that.
That wasn't on the table last week, so it all worked out. We are going to start with a question from a listener named Flyers, One Step Closer. If we are in the playoffs...
Are they about to break?
Yeah. If we are in the playoffs at the trade deadline, I want A, Flyers set the value on target players. If they are met, then trade them. If they are not, you keep them as rentals for a run. B, do not go get a goalie. Just bring Kosov over. KHL is done in 15 games. Are you okay if the Flyers do this? Let me start with A, set the target on players. If the price is met, trade them. If not, you just keep them as rentals for a run.
I mostly agree with that.
I mean, like, no, you trade Nick Sealer. You trade Sean Walker. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Nick Sealer, like, they kind of want to keep him. I don't know.
I got so many problems with
I don't
that.
know.
We talked about it a lot last
The
week, but I got a
rentals,
lot of
I don't
problems.
want to keep. Like, I just don't
Yeah.
think that makes any sense when you're in a rebuild.
Yeah, like, well, if someone,
like
if someone
Lawton-
offers anything for Mark Stahl, you take it.
Well, yeah,
Like that
Mark
kind of-
Stahl doesn't even really factor into the
No.
equation for me. If someone offers something, here you go.
Yeah.
The
Like a
the price
pencil.
you set for him is literally a bag of potatoes.
Yes.
Like, he doesn't play.
It's like how in Moneyball where the movie when they have to stock the soda machine for a year.
I don't want my players paying for soda. Like, that is hilarious. Like, to think that that's a major league franchise and guys are putting a buck in a machine for soda. Anyway,
God.
like, do you think any of the rentals, namely Nick Sealer, Sean Walker, like, there's a reason to keep them?
I mean, the only way you keep Nick Sealer in my mind is if he
You
signs,
re-sign
and I
him,
think they're
yeah.
trying to do that. Sean Walker, I think that they have pretty much resigned themselves to the fact that he's going to get moved. Now, look, if the best offer for Sean Walker is a 4th-round pick, maybe they say, we'll keep him. Like, that doesn't really do anything for us. But
You could probably get that for his rights.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
or
right
seriously.
now, yeah, exactly. That's a really good point. But right now, I think the way they're looking at it with Sean Walker is we want a first. I don't think it's as cut and dry as just tell everyone this is what we're going to take, and if you meet,
That's a good way to make no trades.
Yeah, right.
like,
Chuck Fletcher
what-
School
what
of
I-
Negotiation.
It is reminiscent of that. What I
Yeah.
do think there is, like, what I think it does exist, and this is how I suspect Briere will play it out, is they have an ask. They have the public ask what they want from a team, and basically like, hey, if you want to get a deal done, you offer us this, and you got it. Done.
Yeah.
We're done. Then you have something internally where it's like, okay, if we don't get our ask, what is sufficient for us to do the deal anyway, even if it's not our pie in the
Right.
sky dream? Now, if no one meets that secret limit, then maybe you think about keeping some of these guys. But I think that most likely teams are going to meet that limit. Like,
Probably.
for like, if let's say the ask for Walker is a first, we'll take a second. Maybe we come to the conclusion where it becomes like a conditional first, where something has to happen for it to turn into a 1st-round pick, and that's the deal that gets moved. We'll see. The one thing that is interesting, and this was brought up in our Discord, I was going back through and reading last night when I got home from the flight. Somebody made this point, and it's an interesting point, that while because Briere is a first-year GM, there might be something to be said, and this is his first time doing a deadline, there might be something to be said for him driving a hard bargain this time, because he doesn't want
Set
to
the
have the
bar.
reputation of, well, I'll just give away Sean Walker for a 3rd at the last minute if none of the offers are good enough. And it's a reasonable argument, because the hope in Philadelphia is that Danny Briere is going to be the GM of the Flyers for a long time, and you don't want to have the reputation of being a GM that just gives guys away.
Right.
You want to be the guy who if
hard ass.
if it's a staring contest, Danny ain't going to blink.
Yeah.
So I do wonder if that might play into it a little bit, in that,
I like that, actually.
maybe one guy who we think is definitely going to get moved maybe doesn't get moved because Danny feels like the other GMs are trying to take advantage of him, and he wants to make it clear that, like, no, if you want my guys, you're going to have to pay up.
No, I like that, actually.
That's a very interesting, especially considering outside of Walker and Sealer, Like, there's no one that has to be traded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've said all along, like, you can always trade Scott Lawton. It
Yeah.
might not be for the first round pick you wanted last year, but you can always trade Scott Lawton. There will be a suitor. You can always figure out something with Cam Atkinson at some point down the line. Like, there's no hard, okay, well, you have till July 1st, 2025
Yeah.
to trade Travis Konechny. Like, there ain't no reason to just give in because you think you have to.
Yeah.
So that is interesting. The Kolosov part of this is something I find interesting, just because I hadn't considered
It is
Can he
funny.
Now,
Over
Dynamo Minsk, it has 9 games left on their regular season schedule. I don't have the standings in front of me. No fucking clue if they're a playoff team. No idea what happens in Russian playoffs.
Wow, you don't know
Sorry.
what's happening? That's weird.
But say after these 9 games, because he's on loan, like he's signed to his ELC, he is technically property of the Flyers.
True.
Now, we have seen this play out before with
have.
goalies in the KHL that we thought were coming. May even have signed a contract, and then suddenly they're, prisoners of
In
war,
Siberia,
basically.
yes.
So, do you think it's a possibility, just like if the world was normal, do you think it's a possibility they bring him over like a college player when the season runs out and you give him a shot?
No.
I
So
want it to
here's the reason why I would say no. Look, anything's possible. The reason why this is even a possibility is because
Carter Hart.
well, not only that, he is under contract. He was loaned. So in theory, the Flyers are basically allowing him to play for another team this year. If that player's season overseas is done, he could come over because hey, this year is getting burned off that ELC anyway.
One way or
So
the other.
whatever. The reason why I don't think it's likely, number one, I have always operated under the assumption that Kolosov was not even likely to make the team out of camp next year. That they were going to want to give him some time in the AHL
You would think.
to become accustomed to the North America game and just kind of
That
get
would
his
be the
feet wet in
logical
North
thing to
America,
do.
not
Yeah.
just throw him to the Wolves as the backup. Like, assuming that Carter Hart is not a Philadelphia Flyer next season, my guess is the Flyers will go out and sign or trade for a legitimate backup that isn't Cal Peterson for next year because they won't want to just throw Ersson to the Wolves and give him 65
Yeah.
games while you're paying someone to just basically sit in there and get blown out every 5th night. That said, the difference in my mind between this and a college guy is that the reason why those college guys often play at the end of the year, I would say 9 times out of 10, it's not because like the team is desperate to see them. It's because that's how you get the contract done. Is that
they wanna
otherwise
burn
you
the
end
year.
up with a whiny ass William Gauthier. Yeah.
the player wants to play. So as a carrot to convince him to sign, it's like, well, we'll give you 6 games. You can make your NHL debut, kid. And they're like, all right, I can't turn down a shot to be an NHLer right away. Let's do it. Like Mike Vecchione friggin' played a couple games at the end of the year.
He
and he
sure
like
did.
never even sniffed the NHL afterwards. So to me, making the comparison to a college situation, it's different because in this situation, even if you bring Kolosov over, you no longer have to give him the carrot of you're getting NHL time because he's already under contract. That's no longer an incentive for you to give him. Now, hey, if everybody gets injured, if Ferguson gets injured, whatever, then hell, maybe. But I don't think that is a serious option, personally.
All right. Just do you think it might be a possibility he plays in the AHL?
Yeah, maybe
This year.
if he wants to come over. Like I think a lot of this too.
And like he might be fucking tired.
Yeah,
like he just did play a whole
Yeah.
season at a pretty high level.
Exactly. I don't think the Flyers are going to be on the phone being like, "Get over here, get over here. We want
They're
you
not
to play."
sending the Black Ops team.
No, but if he
Saving that
communicates to the Flyers that, hey, I would really love to get a jump on my North American career now. I'm feeling fresh. I'm feeling healthy. I don't think they would dislike that idea, but I don't think it's something where the Flyers are going to be pestering him to come over.
I'm just picturing Anne LaPerriere sitting there smoking a cigarette, like, get me a fucking goalie. Like,
Fair.
Jesus.
Fair.
Just get me something. Next question from R. Thompson. Let's say the Flyers come away from the trade deadline with one more first-round pick. Would they take best player available, or given it's T-minus 2 years before the crazy Russian? And Thompson, listen, it's Mad
Mad
Russian.
Russian.
By the way,
Mad
Mad
Russian.
Russian hoodies are in the mail. Mine should be here tomorrow,
Ooh.
if not today. I haven't
that.
checked the updated tracking, but I'm pretty sure I'll be wearing mine on the show tomorrow.
for you.
T-minus 2 years before the Mad Russian. Do they draft 3 centers and hope they hit on a big one, or more likely, are they going to consolidate picks to move up? We'll
Okay.
start with that.
Yeah, well, I do want to talk
Say
about.
they have 3 first.
I want to talk about the second part of that
The
question
second
first
part, okay.
because Second part of that question is actually kind of wrong.
I thought they would be targeting defense.
It's well, not even that. Like what he's more or less saying is that the only center that seems to be in the top 20 prospects is Celebrini. That's actually not true. So Celebrini is, he's going to go number one. It's a no-brainer. But Berkeley Catton is another center who's likely to go in the top 20, and so is that Lidstrom, Caden Lidstrom. So there's two other guys who, I mean, obviously there's going to be some.
Caden Lidstrom sounds like such an NHL draft.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
such a fucking. Oh yeah, let's just throw two names together.
Now, I'm not saying
NHL
that.
draft,
Number one,
yes,
there's going to be some scouts that are obviously going to be like, well, he's not actually a center. Both those guys play center. Maybe they ultimately aren't centers at the NHL level, but there's at least that potential. My understanding is both of them have been viewed as centers. And then there's that the Finnish guy, Helenas. He's also a center.
That's a good name.
Yes, Consta Hellenius, I believe is how you pronounce his name.
That's fun.
So there's a few centers. Now, that doesn't mean that the Flyers are going to necessarily trade up to get one of them. But what I am saying is that there are center possibilities in this draft beyond Celebrini.
We have talked about the first part of this a couple of times before. Like, say they have the 3 first-round picks. Like, maybe they target centers. They told us that they're, going to take a step back from defense, but obviously you never stop looking.
Yeah.
But center is now the main need.
Yeah.
What I'll say about this is you never draft for need. Now, maybe if you have 2 guys on your board and it's like, well, we're 50-50 on these 2 dudes, you use it as a tiebreaker. Okay. My prime example is Tampa Bay selecting Jonathan Drouin. You took the guy with the star potential, didn't work out, but because of that pedigree of that player, which lasted well into, this guy might not have it, like well into that part of his career, you traded him for Mikhail Sergachev, and then guess what happened? You won back-to-back Stanley Cups because you got what you needed later. Like, I'm always an advocate for taking best player available.
Agreed.
Like, it wouldn't be a goalie, but, like, the Flyers have plenty of goalies. But if this dude on the board is going to be the next Marty Brodeur, you fucking take him, and someone will call you about him eventually, and then you get whatever you need because of it. That's my philosophy. How the Flyers look at this thing, I mean, especially if they have a bunch of picks, if there's a specific player at a specific position that they're going to trade up for, well, then that means you really trust your scouts. It's like, that guy's the guy we need. Yeah. Then you go get him.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's like, just take the best player available.
To me, it's like, if it's a tie, then maybe you go need.
Yeah.
Or, and this is probably the more applicable and more relevant point of discussion, is if one of the centers slips. That's where it's like, okay, well, hey, this is a positional need. We really like this guy. He was supposed to go in the top 8. Suddenly it's pick 13. He's still around. Then maybe you start thinking, like, to me, I don't think you necessarily have to now trade up for a defenseman. Now, there's a lot of real good defensemen in this draft. If you think you got a future number 1, he slips to your spot, run up there and grab him, because you can always use another future number 1.
Yes.
But to me, it's like, if you're going to trade up, I wouldn't necessarily be burning extra first-round picks to trade off for a defenseman. I would strongly consider burning extra first-round picks to trade off for a center.
If one of the center, that makes sense. Like, and that's like, you have these guys circled, but it's like, realistically, they ain't getting to us.
Yeah.
And then if all of a sudden they do, that changes your strategy.
Exactly.
Like, that makes sense.
Exactly.
All right. Next question from G. Faust. If the team continues to overachieve and say they win a playoff round / look competitive or not far away, is there a chance they look to sign a 1 or 2 seed this summer, or is that still a year or 2 away / is the draft where they will try to address this need? I'm sure they will attempt to address this need in the draft, which is before free agency.
Yeah.
I still don't see them signing a big name free agent this summer.
As much as I want the Elias Pettersson offer sheet,
I mean, that's the only one that could happen.
Highly unlikely in my mind.
Yeah, you can't.
Unless Danny really wants to do what Charlie was suggesting and just really, like, put it out there on the table to be measured and be like, look, motherfuckers, I'm here to play. And I'm going to take Elias Pettersson from your team and you're going to like it. Like, maybe.
I just don't know if they're, like, even if it was a focus of theirs in terms of, like, man, we need to go. Let's get our first line center. I just don't think he's available right now in terms, like, if you could somehow maneuver to get Elias Pettersson, I have to assume that Vancouver is not going to let him leave, especially after the season they've had. I don't know why he would want to leave. he's watching this team win all these games. Why would he want to leave? But who knows?
It's fun
like,
here.
what's their next option? Like Elias Lindholm. If they get Elias Lindholm, everybody's going to be screaming the second after they get Elias Lindholm that they still need a 1C.
And it's a bad contract.
Because he's just Kevin Hayes part 2.
Yeah.
So to me, it's the focus needs to be to find the guy through the draft, through the draft, or by trading for a Zegras type who hasn't quite reached his ceiling yet, but you think can.
Hockey trade.
Yeah.
That's I could see them maybe making a hockey trade, like Ristolainen, whatever leftover pieces that they have left after this deadline to try to get that. But outside of something miraculous like the Pettersson thing, it's going to be draft or kick the can down the road. We'll figure this out later.
Yeah.
Like that's what I see happening. Next question from Barry Schaefer. Sorry to be a pain in the ass. And Barry, you're never a pain in the ass.
Unbelievable,
He asked
Barry.
the question. Well, no, he asked the question about Bonk last week, and I have it saved on my desktop
guy.
still. I still have it, and I was just going to ask it later. But since it came up 2 weeks in a row, I'll ask the question now. What are we thinking about Bonk? He just keeps scoring goals, many of them net front on the power play. I didn't expect a lot of offense from him. And that's, I think the collective response to the Oliver Bonk pick when it was made was like, all right, they got a defenseman and he's got top 4 upside. But like he doesn't seem to have that dynamic like offensive. We called him a stay-at-home defenseman, and Charlie pushed back, was like, well, he's not like a stay-at-home.
No, he's not.
He's just not like, he's not going to be Eric fucking Carlson out there. It turns out maybe he is. No. What I'm seeing, like with all this bumper bonk stuff and the way they're using him on the power play, first of all, was it Gabe Perreault that everyone wanted?
Yes.
And he is teammates with William Gauthier. There is a chance that they were like, well, we know this asshole ain't coming, and now these two are hanging out for a year. Maybe we don't want to mess around with any of his teammates, so we're going to go with this Bonk character. But what I'm seeing, it's funny. His name's Bonk.
It's a great name.
It is.
Fantastic.
But what I'm seeing right now, like we know John Tortorella loves this idea of rovers. He's, given Travis Sanheim the green light. They get Jamie Drysdale. He's here for a minute, and he's like, oh, this dude, he's going to be down at the goal line sometimes.
Yeah.
Maybe they foresaw a little bit of what this was going to be with Bonk and are like, we can deploy him in different interesting ways, or they're just maybe getting lucky in the London Knights. We're like, oh, look at this thing this guy can do. Like, what do you make of what we're seeing out of Bonk right now? I know you have some diehard piece coming out on Oliver Bonk pretty soon.
I do. I will have that later this week. Obviously, I did the piece last week on Denver Barkey, interviewed him over the phone. That came out, I think, on Thursday for diehards only. So check that out if you're a PHLY diehard. And if you're not, we'd love to have you. Love to have you join the membership family. But anyway, the Bonk piece should be coming later this week. To me, look, I think Bonk's point totals, while they're absolutely impressive, like he is benefiting from being on a really, really good London team. He's in that bumper spot on the power play down there. He's scoring a lot of points. He's really racking up the goals in particular. That said, he's not really driving the power play. And
he's playing a role on a good power play.
Yeah, exactly. And like, props to him. For you to be good in that role, you have to be a very smart player. And I do believe he is a very smart player. I don't see the dynamic ability, especially with the puck, for him yet. But if he can continue to develop as a very cerebral, anticipatory player who just sees the ice really well and sees what's going to happen next and takes full advantage, he could be a damn good defenseman. Now, I still don't see number one defenseman in him. I guess you never know. Like, nobody saw number one defenseman in Duncan Keith for like 4 years, and then he became a number one defenseman for a cup team. So, like, you never really know.
Duncan Keith is always my example. Dude spent 2 full seasons in the AHL. Yeah. Suddenly, he's a Norris caliber guy winning 3 cups.
Yeah. So you never know, especially with defensemen. But I still don't see somebody who's that good. Now, I have probably raised my opinion of his potential upside from like, I think he's just going to be a solid second pair defenseman to like, yeah, maybe he could be like a 2-3. Maybe he could be in that like Sanheim type where, he could be your 1 if you're not that good. But if you're on a real good team, he could be your 2 or your 3, and that works. Like, maybe that's a ceiling. And if you're getting that kind of guy in the 20s, it's pretty solid.
question from John Berner. Has your opinions of Bonk and Barky changed in light of their current seasons? How good can they be? We can just look at Denver Barkey because we just talked about Bonk. It looks like this kid might end up being one of those steals. I don't know, like
Seems
first line
like he
caliber
could be.
guy. I doubt it. But like, you need depth. It's something we talk about all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think once you get to an Eastern Conference final, a Stanley Cup final, your top line's like, okay, you're matching stars. Maybe one, just beats the shit out of the other, but they're probably going to mostly cancel each other out. You see that in the top 3, top 6. When you get to that third line, that HBK line for the Penguins, oh, well, we have Phil Kessel and you don't. So we win. Like, could Barkey be one of those X Factor type of guys, especially with all the extra stuff he does? Penalty killing, the speed, all that. The offense he's created for London.
Well, that's the thing. It seems like a lot of fans kind of are like, well, if they're not going to be a top liner, then obviously they're not that exciting of a prospect, or obviously they're not that valuable. But good hockey teams have 3 good lines, and the really great teams have 3 really good lines. And if you have a guy that you took super late and he ends up being a sick third liner, like, that's good. Like, that's a good thing. That's a success, in my opinion.
I mean, I'm really excited about Denver Barkey.
He looks real fun.
But not because I think Denver Barkey is destined to be, the next Claude Giroux, the next Braden Point.
How dare you, Charles?
I mean, I'm not expecting that. Hey, if that happens, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But that's not a fair expectation. No. I watch him and I see a guy who looks like, to me, a surefire NHLer. Mm-hmm. He looks like a guy who's going to find a way. And look, it's not easy to overcome the size that he has. He's not a big guy. But I watch him and I see a guy who's going to find a way, and that's exciting to me.
And we have a general manager who knows what's up with being a little guy in the NHL. So.
Yeah, he does. I like Brian Knight, Denver Barkey, the next G. That was
Many
Kelly's
people
comparison.
Are saying this.
That was Kelly's comparison prior to the show, and I actually liked your the way you put it, like where Giroux was drafted versus value. Like, all right, so you move that down.
Yeah,
draft slot versus value. I could see something like that. Now, like, is he going to be 10-year captain, leader amongst all statistical categories in franchise history? Probably not, because the guy you get first overall probably isn't going to do those things. Like, it's a real reach, but like, I could see him maybe that working out. But anything from your Barkey piece that stuck out to you that maybe you're comfortable sharing without giving away the whole thing? Because pay for it, damn it.
Yeah.
Well, I like the fact that, number one, he has been watching a ton of Flyers games this year. He seems very excited about what they do on the penalty kill. He said he really pays close attention to Travis Konechny, and you can sort of see just like him watching him be like, I can do that. That looks like fun. And it was
so he definitely isn't going to opt out.
It sure seems like he wants to be here, just like Jamie Drysdale, try guy, the fly guy. It seems like he wants to be here. He said that they've had the Flyers have had a presence at London games pretty much from the start of the year, that it's pretty much every other weekend, at least a couple people in the organization are up there. He talks with Riley Armstrong very regularly.
And he actually has these conversations.
Actually does, yeah.
He
picks up the phone.
Yeah.
But like Nick Schultz, Brent Flair, Patrick Sharp.
I always forget Nick Schultz is a thing.
Yeah.
I love the
I mean, I would
Flyers
assume
so
Schultz
much.
is going up there more to talk to Bonk than Barkey.
Yeah.
But like, he's still there.
I
He
know.
probably says hi. He's a former NHLer. But it does seem like, and I'm not saying the Flyers didn't try to reach out to their prospects before. I think they are going to reach out to them so much moving forward. Like, they've hired so many people for this development thing, and then the Gauthier thing happens. It's like, no, just go. Like you literally, here's the credit card. Just go wherever the hell you want and go there every weekend.
I see them setting up almost like a name, image, likeness super PAC for their college guys.
Yeah.
It's going to be like, whatever you need, we got you a Porsche.
Hire every single likable ex-Flyer as professional best friend and just send them all on the road to make nice with the kids.
Yeah, I just get the
Works
sense
for
that,
me.
and obviously they have the connection with London, where number one, they have 2 players on the team.
Yeah.
There's obviously quite a few guys, I believe. Sam Dickens is the big one. Like, they have guys that are draft eligible, which I'm assuming is one of the big reasons why Brent Flair's been up there to watch him, because he's a potential top 10, if not top 5 pick on defense. But not only that, they have the assets, they have the resources to be able to send guys up to London.
It's why
every
having
weekend.
Comcast as the owner is actually good.
I mean, having an owner that's willing to
unlimited
spend a lot of
funds
money
is good.
It's actually good. Yeah.
These are the ways where you can. I'm not going to say it's cap circumvention because it's legal, but this is how you can get around a salary cap because they only cap how much you can spend on NHL players. They don't cap how much you can spend on every other part of your organization.
And that's the advantage being a quote unquote premier organization creates. And that's why I have to get to this. It starts out with Dr. Evil Gritty just doing his thing. Maybe Charlie, maybe Kelly. I don't know which one yet.
Oh my God.
But it starts out with Dr. Evil Gritty just doing his thing and asks if a premier NHL franchise might poach Danny B. But our friend who is in the chat right now, K-Red, follows up with an actual question. Or comment basically. If anyone, they should be worried about Bradshaw getting a head coaching gig.
About that.
And that is something because we talked last week. I don't think Charlie was here for this one, but we look at Torts and Shaw. If they're this good at turning Risto, Sealer, Zamula, Walker into more than we expected, and have hopefully found a new level with Sanheim. I just named all the defensemen basically. You know, shouldn't we kind of be treating depth defensemen almost like NFL running backs? Not to say they're interchangeable, but hey, if we can do this with Zamula and Sealer, we can probably just find guys and turn them into somewhat serviceable dudes.
I mean, that's pretty much what the Rangers did for years with their backup goalie situation behind Lundqvist. It was we have Benoit Allaire, who's the best goalie coach ever. We're never going to have anybody supplant Lundqvist, so let's get a backup goalie in, have him work under him for a year and a half, and then trade him for a second-round pick. Yeah. And they did it 3 times.
No, I remember there was a time where the Richards team had Lundqvist's number, and so Hallecat started 2 or 3 in a row and shut them out twice. Mm-hmm. They were just well, fuck it. Why put Lundqvist through this? And then they'd beat us anyway. So, but if they were to lose Bradshaw, would that be a concern? Because right now I look at this as a definite this is a one-up they have on other organizations. We can find a Nick Sealer who was not an NHL player, not an NHL regular until he came here, and now Nick Sealer might get us something pretty good.
It's very clear that both that and the penalty kill are a huge reason why this team has been any good this season. And I would very much not like to lose the wizard behind all of this improvement. So maybe nobody say anything about Bradshaw anymore. Let's just keep it to ourselves. But I do think that, if I was a team that needed a head coach, I would look at what he's done here and be I would like to interview that man.
So here is what I guess to kick it off, what I'll say is that I would very much advocate for the Flyers to pay Bradshaw more money. Number one, he deserves it. Number two, sure, he's done a great job. He makes sure he doesn't leave. However, I don't think it's something that Flyers fans have to be super worried about. Maybe a little, but here's what you have to remember about this situation. Number one, Bradshaw's 59 years old. He hasn't gotten a head coaching job yet. I'm not saying that that's super old, but it's not super young.
Fair.
And for a guy that's that age to not yet have a head coaching gig at the NHL level, it takes a lot for teams to want it. Teams want the shiny new toy. Bradshaw is no longer the shiny new toy. You hire, teams take risks on guys, in their early 40s or whatever. Even if Bradshaw were to work out for them, he's probably not going to be coaching the team for super long.
Yeah.
It probably shouldn't be as big of a deal as I think it is to teams because teams fire their coaches in 5 years anyways. Who gives a shit? But I think teams do. I think teams would account for that. That said, I did hear that Shaw interviewed somewhere last offseason. So he is at least a guy who gets some looks. Yeah. And given how strong the penalty kill has been this year, maybe. I don't know. I'm a little bit skeptical that he is going to be viewed by the league at large as one of the top candidates. Doesn't mean that a team won't be super impressed and be let's interview him and see how he does. But I just don't get the sense that he is someone who's going to be the hot candidate of the summer, despite how good the penalty kill and the defense has done for the Flyers.
And when you think about it, there's really not a lot of assistant coach to head coach that happens in the league. Like, obviously it happens, but it's not like
It's-
a frequent
A lot of
thing.
times it happens because the coach gets fired.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's like
Yes.
I listened. I wanted to bring this up when we asked this question because I'm listening to 32 Thoughts today, and Jeff Marek is talking about the situation in LA with Todd McClellan, and we see this. It's kind of the same dynamic as Torts, and we've seen it in the past. Like we've called different coaches professional best friends and shit, but like you go from being the assistant coach who's good cop,
Yeah.
to now all of a sudden you have to be the hard ass,
Yeah.
and the players are like, well, this is phony. You
Yeah,
know?
right,
like,
right,
and
right.
like, so it doesn't always take like that, especially maybe if it's in one organization like that. If you go to a totally new organization where the guys don't know you, it's a little different, but it can be a different dynamic. One of the reason I'm most concerned about losing Brad Shaw, honestly, his replacement might be in LePerriere.
Oh my God.
Oh, we're bringing Ian back.
And I'm just
Oh,
like,
no.
they might just hire someone totally different. Maybe Tortorella has his eye on another guy. Maybe there's someone deeper down in the organization.
How long are we going to pretend that Ian LePerriere is good at coaching?
This came
How
up.
long can it last?
I hope that. Look, I don't know for sure one way or the other if Ian LePerriere is a good AHL coach. I would hope that we know fairly confidently that he's not a good
Not.
NHL assistant coach, at least someone who would run a penalty kill, because we have an extended
Real
track
bad.
record of him being bad at it.
I'm just looking at what Brad Shaw does and what Ian LePerriere did when he was here, and thinking, oh no. Here we go
that'd be
again.
terrifying.
Here we go
Let's
again.
not do that again.
Let's just do the last question.
Okay.
Yeah.
From Kyle of the Dead, when we passed, when we passed on Cole Caufield twice in the draft, the previous regime had tried to sell us on the idea that Brink was just as good of a goal scorer. However, you guys seem to think he's more of a playmaker than shooter. What do you think his NHL ceiling is, goals/points wise? I know we made the idea like, oh well, he's just as good of a goal. Maybe we got both with York and Jesus.
I honestly, I was going to
Brink.
try to help you, but I have no
Brink.
idea what direction you're taking this.
Maybe we got like best of both worlds with York
I
and
don't think
Brink
anybody
over
thought that-
Caufield, but just like maybe the overall offensive
Yeah.
production is the same than the goal scoring. I think his ceiling is decent second liner.
I just hope that we get a chance to see more of Bobby Brink. Like, I really need him back on the team. Because, first of all, I think we talked about this last week. He's been doing exactly what you want someone who gets sent down to the AHL to do,
4 points in 5
which is
games.
just
yeah.
tear it the F up and prove that, like, no, I'm actually too good to be here. So bring me back up. And also, I do think he has potential to be an impactful player in the NHL, but I do think he needs to be given the same kind of leash that Forrester was given. Like, I think he needs the time to just get it going at the NHL level. And he wasn't given the same leash that some of the other kids were given. And I get it. But I really do hope that we get another chance this season to see Brink up with the big team.
I gotta
I'm
believe
fairly
we
confident.
see him.
I'm
It
fairly
seems
confident
like
we
we will,
I
right?
really
I think we will.
hope they don't just like, because he was too good when he was playing well to just be like,
Yes.
well, that was luck. Like, I don't think it was.
No.
He was
No.
really good.
No, there's something there. I think he needs to improve. I think
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
needs to improve in areas where the areas he needs to improve in are the areas where Tyson Forrester doesn't need to improve,
Right, yes.
which is why Tyson Forrester is still here and Brink isn't. That said, like, Brink was up for 3.5 months.
Yeah.
Like, it's not as
This
if,
wasn't a tryout.
Yeah, it's not as if they just gave him a brief audition and then gave up on him. Like, he got a
This
long
wasn't-
look.
His minutes got cut real.
Yeah, but not until like January.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it was like into 2024 when it started to be like, oh, he's playing 10 minutes. Like, he played 18 minutes the game before he played 950 or whatever it was.
I also, one point I want to make about this, because obviously Cole Caufield continues to get brought up. I really like Cole Caufield. I do, however, think that Flyers fans make him out to be better than he is because he's like the girl who got away.
Yeah.
Because like I had someone, and this wasn't even sarcasm, this was dead serious. Someone was asked me on Twitter, like, is Cole Caufield, is Travis Konechny better than Cole Caufield?
Yes.
And I was like, of course he fucking is. Like, that's not even close. But the thing is that this person was being like apologetic. Like, I watched it. Basically what this person said was, I watched a game a Montreal game expecting Cole Caufield to be amazing, and he was just fine. And now I'm starting to think that Travis Konechny might be better than him. And I was like, of course Travis Konechny is better than Cole Caufield. Maybe at some point down the road, Cole Caufield could be better than Travis Konechny, but he's not there yet. But I do think that some Flyers fans think he is because they still look at him as the guy the Flyers should have taken. And then he had that real big year a couple years ago where it was like, oh, he's going to be a 60-goal scorer. And he really hasn't gotten to that point yet.
He dropped off big time.
I think he's still a real good player, but I don't think he is this like definitely going to be a star guy that we were certain he was going to be 2 years ago.
He scores a decent number of goals. Like, he hasn't played a full season yet. He had 23 in 67 games. I guess that's a full season. No, that's a regular length season.
Yeah.
23 in 67 games, and then 26 in 46 games. This year he is 17 in 49. He scores in bunches, but it's not as if he's breaking 40 yet. That said, he turned 23 January 2nd.
No, I mean, I'm still very high on Cole Caufield.
There's a huge ceiling, but like at this point, he's just a nice offensive player on a bad team.
Exactly.
Like that's
exactly.
A really fucking bad team.
Yeah.
Like one of the worst teams.
Yeah. So it just like, would I rather at this point, have Cole Caufield than Cam York and Bobby Brink? Yeah, probably. But I don't think it is like this travesty that they didn't take Caufield. Like, Caufield has not done enough yet to make me be like, oh man, this is like Earl Thomas over Brandon Graham. And then Brandon Graham ultimately ended up being a big part of the Super Bowl.
That was the right pick.
So who gives a crap? But seriously, like, that's the way it was positioned for a long time, is like it was the worst decision in team history. And Caufield looks like he's a darn good NHLer. He doesn't look like, so far, he is a game-changing superstar.
But in terms of Brink's upside, like what Caufield is doing now, 20-ish goals, mid-20s maybe.
I think he's like a 30-goal scorer.
40-some points.
Yeah, that's where he is now, 17, 39, and 49 games.
I could see that being Brink's like ceiling.
Yeah.
But for a second-round pick, that's pretty good. You need those
Not
guys
bad.
too.
Yeah.
We all silly like the mayor.